Hey everybody, welcome back to the Simhanger. My name is Mark, and in this video we're going to be dealing with a persistent problem in Microsoft Flight Simulator since day one, and that is, how do we configure and manage those blue levers, the prop levers in multi-engine aircraft, and with particular reference to getting those props in and out of feather. Well, the problem lies within the sim itself. There are just not enough configuration options to give us full control. So the solution I'm offering today is not a perfect solution by any stretch of the imagination, but hopefully there's enough here to get you going. As you can see, for this video I'm going to be using the recently released Just Flight Piston Duke, but the configuration we'll be doing will apply to just about any aircraft. I'll also be using the Honeycomb Bravo throttle quadrant, but once again, if you use a different throttle quadrant such as the Turtle Beach Velocity 1 etc, or whilst the button and axis assignments may be different, providing you follow along and copy the configuration, well, it should work okay. I'm grateful to Flight Sim Builder for sponsoring this video.
Racer 83 Uniform Montgomery, clearance clear to the Palomar Airport. Port after departure, flighting 280, expect radar vec.
When you're ready to take the next step towards realism with tactile feedback, and you're looking for the most realistic navigational device either as part of a cockpit build or standalone, then look to Flight Sim Builder, who have a range of very competitively priced products. Their quality built units are replicas of the real thing, and I can personally attest to them. And why? Well, I use them myself. Want to know more? Visit Flight Sim Builder direct or check out my review videos, link in the notes below. The configuration problems and difficulties can be resolved through the use of third-party programs such as SpadNext, Axis and O's, and so on. However, I recognize not everybody wants to use that sort of thing, so this configuration is making the best out of what's available within Microsoft Flight Simulator to find a workable solution. And before we jump into the config guide, let's just spend a minute or two to understand exactly what the prop lever function is and its importance in keeping your aircraft in the air. Ignoring turboprops for now, the prop lever or levers in an aircraft carry out two primary functions. We're not going to worry so much about the how, but the what. In summary, they adjust the pitch of the propeller and in doing so regulate the engine RPM. We're just pushing the throttle forward now, first one then the other. Keep your eye on the manifold gauge and the RPM gauge. Our propeller levers, the two in the center, are at full at the moment. If we were now to pull back on the pitch levers, it adjusts the pitch or the angle of the propeller, and you'll see the RPM reduction there. First prop 1 and now prop 2. So the movement of the prop levers changes the pitch of the propellers and has a direct impact on the power available to the engine. If we take an external view, this perhaps highlights it even more. I mentioned that the prop lever carried out two primary functions. In addition to regulating the RPM, it also allows you to feather a propeller, and the feather position is that marked in red. For your peripheral, that's normally past the detent position. Turboprop aircraft operate a little differently, but for most piston engines you wouldn't normally feather the props. Just increase the RPM so that the engines don't cut. I'm now going to pull both the levers back as previously all the way down, and now into the detent position or the feather position. That's prop 1 and now prop 2. Both props are now feathered, and you would only normally do this in an emergency when you have an engine failure of some kind. So what does feathering a prop actually do? Well, here I'm going to cut both engines, and when the engines stop you'll notice a difference in the propellers. If you take a look at the engine on your right here, this prop is not feathered, whilst the prop on the left is feathered. Notice how the angle or pitch has changed. And here's an example of when you would use it. If in an emergency situation you need to stop an engine, you cut the fuel and the throttle and prop lever to feather, as I've done with my right-hand engine here. Look at the pitch on the propeller, it's changed. Propeller arms are now side on to reduce the amount of drag. And if you've lost an engine, well, you want the least amount of drag possible to stay airborne the longest. That's the purpose of feather. Let's now move it out of feather. Note I have cut off fuel to this engine and the propellers are now turning back. Something perhaps you would do if you were attempting an engine restart. There's quite a bit more to this subject, but those are the basic principles and why we want our props to feather. There are other reasons you may want to feather your prop, particularly if it's a turboprop type aircraft, but that's beyond the scope of this video. To start our configuration, we're going to head over to the Control Options menu in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, in this config guide, I'm going to assume you have the basic understanding how to do configurations, plus we're not going to do a full configuration. We're just going to focus on the configurations for the two prop axes. The easiest way for you to do this is to take an existing profile, open the preset manager, and duplicate an existing profile that you may have, rename it, as I've done here, Bravo Throttle Quadrant Duke Pro Prop Config. And in this particular one, I have all my normal configurations for throttle, mixture, etc., but I have no prop, and we're going to be configuring the prop from scratch. The Bravo Throttle Quadrant, as you can see, is set up here with 2 throttles, 2 prop and 2 mixture, as it would be, and as suits the particular aircraft that I'm flying. So let's start our config, and we're going to go across here on the left hand side. The filter assigned, we're going to change it to new, and then under power management we're going to come down, and what we're looking for here is propeller. Let's expand that menu, and the first thing we want to do is to assign an axis to prop 1. Now we're going to fully configure prop 1 before we configure prop 2, so that if you are looking to configure a single engine aircraft, we'll just follow the parts that apply to prop 1, and the prop 1 configuration works very well indeed. Now different aircraft or some aircraft will require a slightly different configuration. I'll leave a link to another video where I've done a prop config for the Kodiak 100, which is a turboprop, and also for the Twin Otter, which uses a slightly different configuration. But the configuration we're going through today will suit most. Okay, so propeller 1 axis, I'm going to select the box, start scanning, and I'm going to move prop 1 through its axis, not into the detent, just all the way through its axis. It comes up joystick R, axis Z. I'm happy with that, and validate. For this particular aircraft, I need to uncheck the reverse axis. The next thing that we're looking for is to tell it that we want something to react when we go into the detent position. Okay, when we want to move into feather. And the function that we're looking for is hold propeller reverse thrust. Now I know it's not reverse in the true sense of the word, and it's certainly not thrust, but that's the terminology that Asobo have given it, so we have to go with that. Select the box, start scanning, make sure that your prop is all the way back, just before the detent position, then into the detent and back out again. Joystick button 26. The reason I say prior to config make sure it's all the way back, because as you move it back down you're going to pick up the axis movement as well, and you don't want that. But we're happy with that. Hold propeller reverse thrust. So we've now told it it's going into reverse, but now we need to tell it not only are we going into reverse, but move the configuration down. And to do that, we're going to select increase propeller 1 pitch. Select that, start scanning. We're just before the detent, move it down and move it back out again. joystick button 26 again, and we get a warning that we're already using this for hold propeller reverse thrust. Well, we know that, we're happy with that, validate. So now I have both actions happening, because pass the detent is not an axis, it's a button, and when I push past, both of these actions are happening. We can now apply and save. We can now go back to our aircraft, and I'm just going to increase the throttle 1 slightly so the engine doesn't cut off. And I'm going to move the prop at axis down, and we should hear a change in RPM, which we do. So that's working fine. Now let's see if we can get it to move into the feather. And we do. You notice that this one went directly in there, which it shouldn't have done, but that is one of the faults and one of the limitations that we have. But the one thing that I wanted to point out is when we are in the detent here, as we come out, very often you see how that has just shot fully forward there, even though our prop lever is still here. It's just out of the detent. Pull it back, forward, and it jumps forward. Now we don't want that, and we can stop that, so back to our control options menu. Making sure we're on the correct configuration, back to power management, back to propeller, change the filter to new. Now what we're looking for here, propeller 1 pitch high, and this will stop that when we are in detent and coming out in sim, it automatically jumps all the way forward. When we come out of detent, we just want it to stay exactly where it is, just out of detent, in sim, to match exactly what we've got on our throttle quadrant. To do that, propeller 1 pitch high. This section is very important. If you get it wrong, it won't work for you. So you really do need to pay attention at this point. We select the box. You'll notice that the action type here is on press. This is default. Change that by clicking one of the arrows so that it reads on release prior to starting to scan. Now we're going to scan, and once again I'm going to move this into the detent position. We get the warning message. 2 things are already allocated to that. Yes, we know that. Move it back out so that it takes its joystick button 26 again and validate. However, there's a bug in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and when you set the button action to on release the first time, it never holds. It never sticks. So once you've finished that, click on this again. See how it's gone back to on press? Change it back to on release and validate again. So we have these 2 functions here being on press. Don't change those. It's just this one, propeller 1 pitch high, that we need to change. Okay, we can just click on it and check. Yes, it's on release. We're happy. Validate. Apply and save, and we can go back. Now let's see what happens. Move it into the feather position and back out again. And see, it did not jump forward. We don't have to worry about what the prop 2 is doing, because we haven't configured anything on that axis yet, but we can see the RPM increasing here for engine 1. Comes back into feather, and when we come out it doesn't jump forward. Okay, so we're done on that score. Let's go back to the control options menu again, back to power management, back to propeller, change the filter to new, and now we want to configure propeller axis 2. Now you saw that when we were moving the propeller 1, this propeller 2 axis was jumping all over the place. And by configuring this, we get rid of some of those problems, but not all of them. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, this is a limitation of the configuration options available in Microsoft Flight Simulator. We're going to go ahead and configure, making the best of it that we can. But if you want the best solution, the only option available in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 is to use a third-party program such as SpadNext, Axis the Nose, and so on. So let's go propeller axis 2. That's the one we want. And let's assign that axis. It's joystick R, axis Y. We're happy. Validate. We're just copying everything, remember. We want hold propeller reverse thrust. Start scanning. Now I didn't move that back, and see it's picked up the wrong. If that happens, just click the close box, select it again. We're now in the detent, just above the detent position. Move it in, move it out. Joystick button 27. Notice that I had to put it in the second column because the first column was already taken. So we've got two axes doing the same thing. And this instruction here is the problem child. Hold propeller reverse thrust is a global setting. So when either prop 1 or prop 2 is activated, then the reverse instruction is valid within Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that's what creates the problem. Ideally we want hold propeller reverse thrust 1, 2, 3 and 4 for the various engines, but we don't have that. The next thing we want to do is to copy this instruction, increase propeller 1 pitch, but of course it's propeller 2, so we'll select that, and once again joystick button 27 and validate. So we've duplicated this command and we've duplicated this command, propeller 1 pitch and propeller 2 pitch, and we want to stop it jumping all the way forward. So once again, just as we configured propeller 1 pitch high, we're looking here, propeller 2 pitch high. We're going to select that. We need to change it to on release. Click in the box. I'm going to move it in and out. Joystick button 27. I'm going to validate, but remember what I said, it never ever holds if you're doing the action type as on release the first time. There it is. Change it back again, on release and validate. Let's go back and check one more time. That's working. Let me uncheck the reverse axis on propeller 2 before I forget that. We can now apply and save. Okay, we've jumped back into Sim. Once again, we can just increase our throttles a little bit so the engines don't cut. We've got a reduction in pitch there and there, and we can hear that in the engine noise as well. Now we can move prop 1 into feather. Note prop 2 is now behaving itself, and back out again, and prop 2 into feather and back out again, and then increase them. So that all works fine. The problem is this, that if I have my prop 2, for example, all the way forward and I go into the feather position, it brings them both back in here, which is annoying but unavoidable, I'm afraid. So if you're in a situation where you needed, let's say, to cut engine 1, well, let's say cut engine 2, the only way really you can do it is bring it all the way back just before the detent, then use the mouse and pull it in, and you can now fully feather. Well, at best all we've got is a workaround, but I hope it's been of some use to you. If you've got a better solution, please let us know in the comments below. As always, don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Stay well, look after yourselves, see you again soon, and ciao for now.